So this video is just for my consumption because I'm going to be test fitting the water pump. And what I've done is I've taken all the bolts. These two bolts are actually on the thermostat. These are the bolts that go on the water housing water pump. One of them actually goes all the way in before the water pump is installed. I have marked all of these bolts. You see the number 9, and you see 3, 2, there's a 2, and there's another 2 here. So it goes 3, 2, 11, 11, 11, 11, 2, which you see here. Then you see 8, and 2, 2, 2, 2. Now, what's interesting is that many of these bolts are required to actually secure the timing face cover against the block. That'll be 8, 11, this oddball, which is 7, which actually doesn't go on to the water pump. It is installed first. I should probably install it. And then we go 9, 9, and then 3 doesn't do anything, 3, and then 2 doesn't do anything, but 11, I believe does. 11 does, and the 2s don't. They're used to secure the water pump against the timing cover. But 8 needs to be screwed in after the pump is put on. So the only one that appears to be required first is 7. And if we look at the diagram, now it is, I'm going to do it upside down because that's the way we're looking at the engine. So this is 7. It says 2. It may be a 7. I don't know, but it's not a 7. Because if you look here, this is a, oh, I didn't mark it. It's a 3. I've marked it here, but I didn't mark it here. Huh, odd. So this one appears to just secure the water pump. So this is a rough idea. Look at where these wheels are located. I've forgotten where I took this one off, but that's life. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll get there eventually. So that journey will be tomorrow. So this is only for Robert. So a second video here, only for Robert, is to indicate those bolts that are used to secure this timing plate cover up against the engine. And these need to be secured prior to the water pump being put on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we've got this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then these, because they're water pump. Oh, and this one goes on to secure the timing cover to the block. But the other ones, such as this, are actually used to hold both the water pump and the timing cover plate up against the block. So it's a bit of a coordination here. We'll figure it out. We'll do some more videos. This is for Robert only. Well, here's more of the story. So this engine, which is a 113.991, it's one out of the S55AMG. It is a 113k. There are many variations, apparently, of the 113. There's the one that's in the E-Class, the S-Class, and you'll find some confusing information on the different models. Now, I use the e-manual online. It is a program that's sold by e-manual. Yes, spelled exactly like it. It said e-manual. And reasonably priced. It runs on your computer in a virtual machine. And this is the printout for the timing cover. And I'm here to tell you that this is one confusing installation. Be prepared to have your mind blown. So you will see that the engine's upside down. And as I've mentioned before, the idea is to make sure that these timing chain sprockets stay in place. The lower oil pan has been dry fitted. It is not yet sealed. So the timing chain cover is this part, and you'll see the new oil pump. I put the new oil pump in because the old one was worn. Now, putting caulk on this is complicated. What is also complicated is getting all these bolts put into the right spot. Hopefully you can see here, there's multiple different sizes. They go in different locations. Now, how would I do it over again if I had a chance? Well, the disassembly, I didn't realize how complicated it was going to be. I would have put all these bolts into their proper bags, but I didn't. So I ended up having to dry fit this timing cover without the water pump multiple times. Made for a long day. There are also many different variations. Now, let me try to explain to you that the water pump has what are called number 2 bolts, M6 times 23. Now, for you, those of you know M6 is the width of the bolt, M8 is the width of the bolt. The 19 on M619 is a 6 millimeter bolt that's 19 millimeters long. And the whole process goes the whole way down there. I did get a micrometer, make sure at least I got it right. If you're not a professional mechanic, this is going to be a nut roll. I'm just telling you the way it is. So be prepared to sit down, take a long time. You can see how I labeled things like number 4, 7S. 7 is, as you can see, 7 here. It's an M8 by 70. It is also one of the bolts that requires sealant to be put on it. Now, sealant's on the other side. It's a little unclear when you look at some of the diagrams, but that's where the sealant goes. The sealant is a pain to put on because at least the Mercedes sealant requires you to have it up on the surface and torqued within 10 minutes. Well, I got some different sealant, but that's a whole nother story. Your mileage may vary. Now, each sealant has different properties. Some resist oil, some resist gas, some resist coolant. There are so many different kinds of RTV, or room temperature vulcanization. That's what RTV stands for, that my head spins. But if you like the journey, you're going to learn a lot. So how would I recommend this be done if I were to do it again? I would clean, obviously, all the bolts. I would put them in bags labeled 1, 2, 3, just as you see on the sheet. And then I would mark out where the bolts go with a marker. When you've got a 10-minute potential time limit to apply the timing chain cover and to get the bolts in, it puts a little pressure on you. Have your torque specs ready to go. Oh, where are my torque specs? Oh, I know I have them here. I will have to look it up. Give me a second. I'll look it up for you. Let's see. So the timing cover to the block is 20 Newton meters. So the timing cover to the block is 20 Newton meters. The water pump to timing cover, each one of these little bolts, is 14 Newton meters. Now, what is interesting about this is that some of the bolts that go through the water pump also secure the timing cover to the block. So these number 2s are all 14s. This number 8 is actually a 20 Newton meter. This one here is 20 Newton meters. When you get through the process, you'll sort of figure out by looking at it which one is which. It takes a long time. Take your time. Don't be in a hurry. just be chill, because doing it wrong is obviously a bad thing. Now, this little gadget, which holds one of the wheels for the belt, actually has, you had to put sealant on the backside. And you can see, I'll turn this upside down because that's the way the picture is. You'll see this is where the oil filter goes, and that's number 10 right there. That's number 10. You actually have to have sealant on the back side on this one. So it's marked. It's a little hard to tell. It says 10S. And then 8 here actually goes through the water pump and secures the timing cover onto the cylinder block. So it is a difficult and challenging process if you're not accomplished at it, and I'm not. So 7S right here goes through the timing cover, and there's sealant on the back side. And let's see if I can get a picture of the sealant on the back side. Oh yeah. You can see that there's a couple of patterns. There's the blue, where the sealant goes, and then there's pink, where sealant doesn't go. But oddly enough, you see a little island of blue right here. The reason they don't want sealant on those is because those are oil passages. And you don't want RTV going into the oil passages and plugging an oil passage. Now, you see it says gasket. There's also a gasket here and a gasket there. And you can also see that they want RTV. So it's going to be RTV plus a gasket. Very confusing. The Germans, great engineers. I love them to death. But if there's a way to make it complicated, they know how to do it. And this lower piece here, where it shows D, gasket, that is actually something that takes the lower upper oil pan, which has not been RTV'd yet. That's what you're looking at there, because obviously I've got it upside down. I guess if I was being nice, I'd put this upside down for you so you can see what I'm pointing out. That's the way the engine is currently sitting. So there's a lot of RTV that has to be put on. I didn't film it because I couldn't do the filming plus the RTV plus the installation. I just can't do it. So what did I learn from the process? When it comes to putting the water pump on, make sure these bolts, which are marked number 2 here, which only secure the water pump to the timing cover, are installed finger tight before you put the cylinder, the timing chain cover to the block bolts in. And why do I say that? Because if you do these first, the ones that go from the timing chain cover through the water pump into the block, you'll discover that you've knocked these number 2s off that just go into the from the water pump into the timing chain cover. You'll throw them off a little bit, and then you have to back this one out, back these out. They lose their alignment. So do these number 2s that take the water pump to the timing chain cover, and do them first. You don't have to secure them all the way, but at least get them threaded in by hand. Then you go ahead and put on all the bolts that go through the water pump into the cylinder block that hold the timing chain cover on. It's confusing. I don't know why they made it so hard, but that's the way they did it. You'll discover that these diagrams that you get from eManual online are not 100% accurate. And I can point out, if you look here, it says number 2 and number 2. I know they're upside down, forgive me. Well, that's a number 2 bolt, but that's not a number 2 bolt. So take these instructions to heart, but this is where the water thermostat goes, and there's no way it's going to fit on there with a number 2. So it confused me a little bit. I was lucky enough to get it figured out. Also, make good friends with your parts department at the Mercedes dealership. Yes, that requires buying some parts from the Mercedes dealership. But hey, there's some parts you can only get from the Mercedes dealership because they can actually print this stuff out. They can tell you all the parts that are required to do an installation of the timing chain cover, the water pump. Because when they print out the parts list for the technicians, they're also printing out all the auxiliary parts like RTV, Loctite, you name it, for the parts that they're giving to the technician. And they'll tell you, they actually printed it out for me, which was wonderful, which helped save me a lot of hassle. So that's the timing chain cover. That's the water pump. There is on the back side of here a little bit of RTV that has to be applied. You'll be able to see it. Now, why it's applied, I have no idea. I don't see a water passage. It just says to do it. And it's on the back side of this bracket, right in this area, on the back side. When you disassemble the engine, you'll notice that there's RTV back there. Make a note of it, take a picture, do a video, whatever you have to do in order to get it done correctly. I also changed the front main seal, which makes sense. This engine's, 21 years old? It's got 100,000 miles on it. I don't suspect that that's going to survive. So let's bop on over to the rear cover. So this is the rear main seal. Yes, I replaced it. No, I didn't do a video. It's fairly easy to do. You pop it out, you slide it in. But before you do that, you see all these little bolts. I think they're M620s. You pop them all out, you pull the cover off, and on the back side, the side up against the block will be RTV. Now, these bolts are done to 10 Newton meters, or about 88, I think it's inch pounds. Take them off, clean it. I was told by a very good friend to use the red Scotch-Brite, which I've been doing, or reddish brown. You slide it back in, you torque them down, then you put the new rear main seal on. Pretty easy to do. And I did that not because there was a leak, but because, like I said before, this thing is 20 plus years old. I don't want to have a leak on the old RTV. Now, the next step is going to be the lower oil pan. And I have dry fitted the lower oil pan. So we're looking at the RTV pattern for the lower oil pan. This is the upper oil pan. I'm not there yet. And realize that my engine is a 113. This is for the 112. That's for a 4MATIC. This one is without 4MATIC. Those are the 6-cylinder ones. Now, there are some errors in the manual. Even the ones at the dealer are in error because I had my friend who works at the parts department. Her parts manual is exactly like mine. And you see these different bolts. I put the torque specs here, 80 inch-pounds for the M6. And the M8s are 177 inch-pounds. You kind of want that before you start torquing them down, because realize on some of these RTVs, you have a time limit. You have to get it done. And trying to figure out what your torque spec is right when you need it, kind of a pain in the ass. Here's the RTV. It's not hard to figure out. This is the upper one, which I've dry fitted. There's no reason for me to show you applying RTV. That's kind of boring. Now, I've dry fitted all of the bolts. I've made sure that I've got the right bolts, that they fit, that the threads are good, because when I finally apply this upper oil pan, there's 2 oil pans. There's the upper, which I'm looking at right here, and here is the lower. I want to make sure that I get it done right the first time. I don't want to find out I'm missing a bolt, or it's the wrong bolt, or I don't know the torque spec, or that I can't get the bolt to go in. That would be just a nightmare. I also have my tools ready to go. There's no reason to figure out that I've got the wrong tool or I've got to go searching for it. This uses an M8 and an M6, which are two different drivers. This is the E14, and this is, I think, an E12. Yes, it's an E12. So the vast majority go with E12s. I have my torque wrench ready to go. As you can tell from the diagrams, I've already listed out the torque specs for all of this. So when I do apply the RTV, I'm going to just put it down and start putting them down. And I don't, since it's such a light torque spec, it's what, 88 inch-pounds here. And with this one, it's, oh God, what was it? I've got it written down. It's one of the reasons I write all this stuff down. 88 inch-pounds for the M6s. And the M8, which is here, that is 177 inch-pounds. I don't want to have to fake it until I make it. I don't want to be looking for the driver. I don't want to be looking for the tool. I don't want to be looking for the torque wrench. I am not a professional mechanic, which should be pretty obvious from anybody watching. But I do like doing it right. So that's why I've dry fitted everything, made sure I've got the right nuts and bolts. Now, what would I do differently? A year ago when I disassembled this, I would have paid attention to the different bolts. I would have definitely put them in bags. I didn't know enough at the time to know how important that was. The end result is I've had to sort through these bolts, figure out which ones are which, take my micrometer, measure the bolts to determine which ones were which. I've learned a lot in the process. And next time I do it, I'll know exactly what I have to do. This is a learning curve. My goal is to save everybody who's doing this the time and the headache. But we all make mistakes, and I'm definitely one of the ones that have made mistakes. So that's about it. There'll be more videos. I may publish this one because I don't consider what I'm doing now to be particularly exciting or interesting. I'll take all these bolts out. I'll label them in these little bags. See, this is the M6B20. That's these guys, these 20 millimeters that are M6s. I'll have them all ready to go. I'll have my tools ready to go. I'll have my torque wrench ready to go. And I'll just apply, and I'll have my paperwork ready to go. So I'll get that done. I'll get the lower oil pan done. Not a big deal. And then we're going to go to the heads and do some more fun stuff, which will have more detailed videos because I won't be under time constraints with RTV. So I'll be back.